In June 1941, the Luftwaffe destroyed over 2,000 Soviet aircraft in the first week, most still on the ground. The VVS was decapitated. Western experts gave it weeks. They saw obsolete biplanes and called them flying coffins. They were wrong. This is how the Soviet Union rebuilt the largest air force in history, over 150,000 aircraft, and turned the sky against the invaders. From pilots ramming enemies in desperation, to the flying tank that shredded German armor, to the apex predators that swept the Luftwaffe from the Eastern Front. These are the machines that helped win World War II. The Desperate Defense, 1941-1942. When the war began, the Soviet skies were defended by technology that belonged in a museum. But in the hands of desperate men, even a museum piece can be a weapon. The Little Donkey, Polikarpov Wartar-16 Ishak. First, we have the I-16, affectionately known as the Ishak, or Little Donkey. In 1941, this was the primary Soviet fighter. It was small, tricky to fly, and possessed an open cockpit. Against the modern German Messerschmitt Bf 109, it was hopelessly outclassed in speed and firepower. Yet the Little Donkey was incredibly durable. Soviet pilots, often out of ammunition, used the I-16 for a desperate tactic known as the Taran, the mid-air ram. They turned their aircraft into battering rams, trading their lives to stop the bombers. The Seagull, Polikarpov, I-153 Chaika. Alongside it flew the I-153 Chaika, or Seagull, a biplane in a monoplane war. It sounds ridiculous, but the Chaika had a trick up its sleeve: extreme maneuverability. In a turning fight at low altitude, it could spin circles around the faster German fighters. It remained a lethal nuisance until 1942, proving that agility still had a place in modern war. The High Altitude Mistake. MiG-E-1 and MiG-E-3, not all early designs were old. The MiG-E-1 and its successor, the MiG-E-3, were designed for speed. They were built to intercept bombers at high altitudes, above 15,000 feet. There was just one problem. The air war on the Eastern Front was fought on the deck, at low altitudes supporting tanks. Down low, the MiG-3 was heavy and sluggish. It was a racehorse trying to pull a plow. While it failed as a frontline fighter, it found its niche defending Moscow from high-flying reconnaissance planes. The Varnished Coffin, Lay GG-3. Then there was the Lay GG-3, made of Delta wood, a plastic-impregnated plywood composite. It was heavy, underpowered, and unforgiving. The pilots hated it. They grimly joked that the acronym LAY-G stood for Lakirovany Garantirovany Grob, Varnished Guaranteed Coffin. But the Lay-GG-3 is important for one reason: it survived. Its wooden frame was fire-resistant and incredibly sturdy, and its airframe would soon become the chrysalis for a butterfly that would terrify the Germans. The industrial miracle and the turning point. By 1942, the Soviets had pulled off an industrial miracle, moving their factories behind the Ural Mountains. Now they needed planes that were simple to build, easy to fly, and deadly. The savior, Yakovlev Yak-1, enter the Yak-1. This wasn't just a plane, it was a platform. It offered excellent handling, and crucially, it was evenly matched with the German Bf 109F. It gave Soviet pilots a fighting chance. It was the foundation for the entire Yakovlev lineage that would eventually dominate the eastern sky. The transformation, its Lavochkin Law 5. Remember the Varnished Coffin, the Lay-GG-3? In a stroke of genius, designers took that despised wooden airframe and bolted on a massive, powerful radial engine. The result was the LA-5. Suddenly, the Coffin became a killer. It was fast, rugged, and heavily armed. The LA-5FN variant could finally go toe-to-toe with the dreaded German Focke-Wulf 190. It proved that you didn't need aluminum to build a world-class fighter. You just needed Russian engineering and brute force. The mass production hero, Yak-9. If the Yak-1 was the pioneer, the Yak-9 was the soldier. This was the most produced Soviet fighter of the war. It was versatile. Need a long-range escort? Use the Yak-9D. Need to bust a tank? Take the Yak-9T, equipped with a massive 37mm cannon in the nose. It was a reliable workhorse that simply overwhelmed the Luftwaffe with numbers and firepower. The Hammer, terror from the sky. While the fighters cleared the air, the real war was being fought on the ground, and for the Wehrmacht, the sky was about to fall. The legend, Il-2 Sturmovik. No discussion of Soviet air power is possible without the legend, the Il-2 Sturmovik. Joseph Stalin famously wrote to a factory manager, "The Red Army needs the Il-2, like it needs air, like it needs bread." It remains the most produced military aircraft in history. Why? Because it was a flying tank. The pilot didn't sit behind armor, he sat inside it. The entire forward fuselage was a bathtub of steel. Bullets from German machine guns would literally bounce off its hull. The Germans called it the Zement bomber, concrete bomber, or the Schwarzer Tod, the Black Death. It decimated panzer divisions and broke the morale of the German infantry. The dive bomber, Petlyakov P-2. While the Il-2 bludgeoned the enemy, the Petlyakov P-2 acted as the surgeon. Fast, twin-engined, and capable of precise dive bombing, the Peshka was the primary tactical bomber. Its speed made it difficult for German fighters to catch, allowing it to strike bridges and command centers with deadly accuracy. The late war Hammer, Tupolev Tu-2. Towards the end of the war, the Tu-2 entered the fray. It was arguably the best medium bomber of World War II. Fast as a fighter, with a massive bomb load. It arrived too late to change the war's outcome, but it accelerated the inevitable crush of Berlin. The Hunters, 1944-1945. By 1944, the roles had reversed. The Luftwaffe was crumbling, and the VVS unleashed its apex predators. The Dogfighter Supreme, Yakovlev Yak-3. The Yak-3 was a masterpiece of weight reduction. It was smaller, lighter, and incredibly agile. At low altitudes where the dogfights happened, nothing could touch it. It was so dangerous that the Luftwaffe High Command issued a specific directive to their pilots. Avoid combat below 5,000 meters with any Yakovlev fighter lacking an oil cooler under the nose. They were talking about the Yak-3. For the first time, German pilots were told to run. The Acemaker, Lavochkin La-7, and finally the Lavochkin La-7. This was the perfection of the wooden fighter concept. Aerodynamically refined and incredibly fast, it was the chariot of aces. Ivan Kozydub, the top Allied ace with 62 kills, flew the La-7. He even managed to shoot down a German Me-262 jet fighter in this piston engine machine. The La-7 was the final nail in the Luftwaffe's coffin. The strategic reach and unsung heroes. Victory required more than just fighters and attackers. It required a supporting cast of specialized machines. The Night Witch's broom, Polikarpov Po-2. We return to a biplane, the humble Po-2 Kukuruznik, crop duster. Obsolete? Yes. Harmless? No. The famous all-female 588th Night Bomber Regiment, known as the Night Witches, used these slow fabric planes to terrorize German troops. They would cut their engines and glide silently over the trenches, dropping bombs before the enemy knew they were there. The sound of the wind rushing through their rigging was the last thing many soldiers heard. The strategic giant, Petlyakov PE-8. The massive four-engine PE-8 was the Soviet answer to the B-17. Though built in small numbers, it undertook high-profile missions, including bombing Berlin as early as August 1941, a psychological blow proving that the Soviet Union was far from defeated. The backbone, Lisanov Li-2, and we cannot forget the Li-2, a license-built version of the American Douglas DC-3. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the veins of the Red Army, transporting troops, supplies, and the wounded across the vast Eastern Front. The eyes of the fleet, Beriev seaplanes. On the flanks, the Beriev MBR-2 and MDR-6 seaplanes patrolled the coastlines. Known as sea cows, they were slow and ugly, but vital for hunting submarines and spotting for the Soviet Navy. The story of Soviet aircraft in World War II is not just about aerodynamics or horsepower. It is a story of evolution under fire. They started the war with coffins made of wood and fabric, outmatched and outgunned. But through sheer grit, industrial brute force, and brilliant engineering adaptation, they built an air force that broke the back of the Luftwaffe. From the sacrificial rams of the Little Donkey to the terrifying roar of the flying tank and the agile dominance of the Yak-3. These machines cleared the road to Berlin. They weren't always the most advanced planes in the sky, but they were exactly what history demanded. The right weapons at the right time to win the most brutal war mankind has ever seen.